Moedim L'Simcha. I hope everyone's having a wonderful Sukkot. In class, we discussed the question of why you have to say the Bracha on the Lulav before you fulfill the mitzvah, and we analyzed this question by taking a lengthy passage from the Tosafot, breaking it down into components, and going through it step by step. As a brief review here, I'm simply going to read the Tosafot as it appears in the Gemara. I think sometimes it can be helpful to see the original source and not just see the way it was broken down on the sheet that was our class handout. So we're in Masechet Sukkah Daf Lamed Tet Amud Aleph, page 39a in English, and the Gemara tells us over here, the Amar of Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Kol HaMitzvot Kulan Mevarech Alehen Over La'asiyatan. The whole mitzvah, the blessing is made over them prior to doing it, Over La'asiyatan. So you have to recite the bracha before you do the mitzvah. And the logical conclusion we would reach from that is that you have to recite the bracha on the Lulav and Etrog before you fulfill the mitzvah of Lulav and Etrog. And Tosafot here want to know how we do that. So for Tosafot, we look to the left side of this page. The Dibur Manchil Over La'asiyatan. As we mentioned in class, the Tosafot are commentaries of Rashi's grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and their students. So it's a collection of these Ashkenazic interpretations. And says Tosafot, Mita'am zeh, for this reason of Over La'asiyatan, Tzarich levarech al Lulav kodem sheitlenu. You're required to say the bracha on the Lulav before you pick it up. Di'i la'achar shenatalo, if you were to wait until after you pick up the Lulav to say the bracha, mida'ag bei, nafak bei. Once you lift it up, you have already, nafak in Aramaic means like yotzei in Hebrew. You already yotzei the mitzvah. You already fulfilled the mitzvah. Kedamriyan b'sof pirkei, as the Gemara says later in this parak. Umiu lo mistaber klal. But, however, says Tosafot, this actually does not make sense to say that you should say the bracha before you pick up the lulav. Deheach yivarech alav v'hu munach b'kli. How could you say the bracha when the lulav is still in some sort of a container, let's say a lulav case or whatever? How can you do that? Ha'amar b'hakometz rabba tefillin me'imatay mevarech alehen mishat hanacha ad shat kshira. It says in Masechet Menachot in the chapter called HaKometz Rabbah, so the Talmud says elsewhere, when is the right time? Me'imatay, when is the time to say the blessing on tefillin? From the time you already put the tefillin on your arm, let's get a good angle of that over here. Once you put the tefillin on your arm, from then, ad shat kshira, until the time when you actually tie up and wrap up the tefillin. So we see from there, from that halacha regarding tefillin, that although the bracha has to be before, it has to be immediately before. It can't be way before. So long as, or any time that the mitzvah is not mizumenet, it's not sort of available, accessible in the guy's hand to do right now, it doesn't make sense to say the bracha. In Aramaic, this is called over de over. We want to say a mitzvah over la'asiyatan before it's doing it, but not over de over la'asiyatan, not before, not two stages before, but rather immediately before. So with the lulav, right, Tosafot initially thought the way to say the bracha beforehand is that you've got your lulav in the lulav case and the etrog in the etrog box, and you're going to say the bracha. Tosafot says, no, that doesn't work, because we see from the example of tefillin, you wouldn't say the bracha on tefillin while it's in your tefillin bag. You'd only say it when you already have the tefillin out, have it on your arm, locked and loaded, so to speak, ready to go. Shat hanacha, it's already been put down, placed upon your arm. And then right before the kshira, right before you actually start wrapping it, that's the time that's immediately before the mitzvah of kshira, the mitzvah of tying tefillin, of ukshartam la'ot al yadecha, that's when you'd say the bracha. So how can we fulfill both these things? How can we say the bracha before you fulfill the mitzvah of lulav, yet immediately enough before that we won't say it's too far before? So Tosafot has a suggestion now. Shema mishayatchil litol lulav kodem sheyitol ha'etrog mevarech. So Tosafot says maybe one good solution would be to say the bracha once you've already lifted up the lulav, but before you lifted up the etrog. And so at that point, it's over la'asiyatan. It's still beforehand the mitzvah. Shem'akvin zeh et zeh, because the lulav and the etrog are ma'akev. That means that they depend on each other. You can't fulfill the mitzvah until you have all four species. Let's say some guy had a lulav and he couldn't get an etrog. So you might say, have him pick up the lulav, and shake that. At least he'll get 3/4 credit for the lulav hadasim and aravot, even though he'll miss out on full credit for not having the etrog. And that is true of some mitzvot, where partial fulfillment is better than nothing. But Tosafot says in lulav that's not the case. Lulav and etrog, all 4 species, lulav, etrog, hadasim, and aravot, are ma'akvin. They depend on each other. Literally, they hold each other up. You can't get the mitzvah until you've got all 4 of them. Therefore, when you're holding the lulav in your hand but no etrog yet, you have not fulfilled the mitzvah at all because you're still missing the etrog. But now you've shown that you're really close to fulfilling it, right? It's not like before when the lulav was in the lulav case. And so maybe that's the right time. That's before you fulfilled the mitzvah, but immediately before. It's very close to when you fulfilled it. So that would be a good time to say the bracha. That's the first suggestion. Inami, a second suggestion, also, says Tosafot, maybe you could say the bracha even after you pick them both up. Now, if you pick them both up, I thought we said before that that when you pick it up, you right away get the mitzvah. So Tosafot says, no, you could do this trick where you pick it up, but you turn one of them upside down. So it sounds like you could turn either the lulav upside down or the etrog upside down. In practice, most normal people turn the etrog upside down because it's a lot harder to turn the lulav upside down. But by turning one of them upside down, what happens? You have the 2 items here, so you're very close to getting the mitzvah, but you have not yet gotten it because, says Tosafot, we're going to say at the end of this chapter, that when you flip it over, you have not yet fulfilled the mitzvah, because you cannot fulfill this mitzvah except in its natural way. Or in plain English, you can only fulfill this mitzvah of lulav and etrog in the natural way of holding a lulav and etrog. So they all grow with their stems at the bottom growing up. Therefore, you need the lulav pointing up, the dasam and aravot pointing up with the part that they were cut from at the bottom, because that's the way they would grow vertically, and the etrog has to have the pitom pointing up, and we call the uket, that like stem at the bottom. So, therefore, says Tosafot, if you're holding the 4 species, the arba minim, but you have one of them flipped upside down, you have not yet gotten the mitzvah. The ein yotzei mitzvah, you can't fulfill this mitzvah, ela derech gedilatan, except if you do it in the natural way that it grows, meaning with the pitom pointing up, or the lulav pointing up. So if you hold them together, but one of them is upside down, you're really very close to getting the mitzvah, right? All you have to do is flip the etrog up, and you'll have the mitzvah. And so it's over l'siyatan, it's before you got the mitzvah, but it's right before, you're so close to getting the mitzvah, now would be a good time to do it. If you want to know the source of this, we skipped this part in class. Tosafot says the same idea of derech gedilatan, of having to grow naturally, applies to the atzei shitim, the wood that they used in the midbar for the Mishkan. The wood had to be placed in the same way standing up that it grew. So far Tosafot has 2 ways then that you could have the lulav ready to go, close enough to the mitzvah that you can say the bracha because it's immediately before, but it is still before. Option number 1 is to hold the lulav but not the etrog, say the bracha, then pick up the etrog. Option number 2 is to hold all of them but have one of them upside down, so you also won't have fulfilled the mitzvah yet. Now they give a third suggestion. Even if you hold the lulav and etrog together and they're both pointing up, maybe you can still say the bracha. Now, we thought you can't, because we thought that if the arba minim, if the 4 species are all held together in their natural growing way, then you already got the basic mitzvah. Tosafot says, no, you can get out of that. But you can do efshar, it's possible, you could intend, you could have kavanah, say, I don't want to fulfill the mitzvah at achar bracha, until after the bracha. So even though I did the act of the mitzvah already, because I put the lulav and etrog together in their natural way, even so, because I had kavanah in my mind that I'm not going to fulfill the mitzvah yet, that means the action I did doesn't take effect. Now, is that true? Is that true that if you do an action, but you don't intend to get the mitzvah, the action doesn't count? So Tosafot explains here. They say, there is a debate about whether mitzvot require kavanah or not. There are those who maintain that, indeed, you can't get credit for a mitzvah least especially mitzvah d'oraita, we try to be strict about this. You can't get credit for it unless you really intend to do the mitzvah. But Tosafot says, "Afagav dermina b'sofra ubeitin the mitzvot enan tricho kavana." Even though we have a Gemara elsewhere in Masachet Rosh Hashanah that seems to say that mitzvot do not require kavana, and that if you did a mitzvah without any awareness, the example we gave in class, which comes from the Gemara, is that some guy is sitting around minding his own business on Pesach Eve. He's not thinking about doing a seder. He's just, twiddling his thumbs. And some outside person comes and shoves matzah down his throat. And before this guy even realizes what happened, he swallowed a matzah. So, Gemara seems to say in that passage, mitzvot enan trichen kavanah, that mitzvot don't require kavanah. And so that guy who was just minding his own business, and before he realized what happened, the matzah went down his throat, he does get credit, because bottom line, he ate the matzah. And so I might say over here also, bottom line, if you're holding a lulav and etrog together, I don't care what you're thinking, you fulfilled the mitzvah, and now it's too late to say a bracha. So Tosafot says no. Mikol makom, nevertheless, even though there is a passage in the Gemara which implies that mitzvot do not require active kavanah, but ba'al korcho la nafik, you still can't fulfill the mitzvah against your will. In other words, if we think about the different types of kavanah, there is active kavanah to do a mitzvah, to put on tefillin while you're thinking you want to do the mitzvah of tefillin, to shake a lulav while you're thinking you want to shake a lulav, to eat matzah because you're thinking about the fact that it's the seder. That's the ideal way to do mitzvah. If I say mitzvot in trichin kavanah, I say even without that, if all you're doing is thinking about nothing and matzah goes down your throat, you get the mitzvah. If you're thinking about nothing, or you're only thinking about practicing the instrument of a shofar and you happen to blow the shofar, maybe you can get credit that way. But, says Tosafot, what if you have what I called negative kavanah? You are thinking about what you're doing, and you're actively thinking, I do not want this to be the mitzvah. So you had a shofar and you thought to yourself, I'm going to blow this because I like blowing a ram's horn, I like the sound of it, but I don't believe in Rosh Hashanah, so I do not want this sound to get me credit for the mitzvah of shofar, even though it's Rosh Hashanah today. If you actively thought that, you wouldn't get credit for the mitzvah. We're not going to make you do the mitzvah ba'al korcho, against your own will. And so too, maybe in that same matzah scenario, maybe if when the guy was sort of sitting around doing nothing and someone came in to shove matzah down his throat, the guy said, I don't care what they shove down my throat. I do not want this mitzvah. Maybe then he wouldn't get credit. And so here too, if you pick up this lulav and you say, I do not want credit for this mitzvah. I'm only holding it together so it'll be ready to go when I say the bracha. But I do not want credit for this mitzvah yet, because I didn't say the bracha. And then you say the bracha, and after you said the bracha, now you think, okay, now I really want credit for the mitzvah, because now I said the bracha. Says Tosafot, maybe that works, that you won't get credit for the mitzvah, you won't fulfill your obligation until after you said the bracha, because you consciously thought about the fact that you don't want credit for the mitzvah until that point. I'm going to skip a little bit over here, just as we skipped in class. To the end of this line over here, Tosafot gives another answer. And all these last three answers, they all assumed that if you already got the basic mitzvah by holding the lulav and etrog together, then it's too late to say a bracha. And they were all different tricks for you to not fulfill the mitzvah yet. Either you don't hold everything, you hold something upside down, or you think actively how you don't want credit. Now they give another option. They say, you know what? Maybe that whole assumption is wrong. Maybe it's possible that even though you did fulfill the basic mitzvah by holding it, and you're supposed to say the bracha beforehand, maybe you can still say the bracha because you're still in the act of doing the mitzvah. And so it's still called over the siyatan until the mitzvah is done. Mishum delo gamra mitzvato arachar niyanua. Since your mitzvah is not totally done until you shake in different directions, since that's the ideal way to do the mitzvah, maybe as long as you're still doing that, you can say the bracha. Just like we say the bracha al netilat yadayim after we wash, delo gamra mitzvato arachar niguv, since you haven't completed the mitzvah until after you dry off. Because the Gemara says, the asr lechol below niguv yadayim, not allowed to eat until you dry off. So just like there, you can say al netilat yadayim, even though you washed your hands already, because the mitzvah of netilat yadayim isn't done until you dry off. So to here, the mitzvah isn't done until you do the nanuim. But Tosafot acknowledges it's not entirely the same thing, because Because over here, Mishenatal Avra Kfar Ikar Mitzvah. When you pick up the lulav, you've already lost the main mitzvah.